Hello, I'm Dango Rose. Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast, where everybody's listening. The Mountaineer brings you the latest news of the Peak-to-Peak region, in print, online, through our podcast, social media, and special publications. Now, listen in to the latest news of the area with our local journalists.
The song that you are currently listening to is called Lights Along Broadway, and it's performed by Haymakers. You can check out the full song on their live album, Live at Art Church, or on their studio album, Wakanda Flyer. No, that is not spelled like the Marvel city of Wakanda, but rather W-A-C-O-N-D-A. More explanation on the title of that album in the next interview.
The lights along Broadway remind me of Christmas somehow. And it's too bad you're not around. It's Saturday night in this packing plant town.
Hello! My name is Jamie Lammers, and welcome to this week's episode of Music of the Mountains, Where to Be and What to See, brought to you by the Mountaineer Podcast. For this week's episode, I actually have two interviews for you, for a specific reason that I'll get into once we get to the second interview of this week. But first, our first musical guests, do you mind introducing yourselves real quick?
My name is Dustin Arbuckle. I sing and play harmonica with Haymakers.
Tom Page, singer, songwriter, guitar player, Haymakers.
And I hear that you'll be performing very soon at the United Center in Idaho Springs.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. We were in Idaho Springs at a house concert last summer around the same time, and so we're really happy to be back in the Front Range.
Yep, Saturday, June 8th. We've been looking forward to the show for a while. Been hearing cool things about the United Center as a venue from other friends who have played there, and we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I suppose I should say a shout out to our friends Bob Hickam and Gary Jorgensen from the area. Thank you for helping us put this together. The folks at the Kind Mountain Collective.
Yes.
So I wanted to start by asking, how did Haymakers begin in the first place? How did you guys meet? How did the band start? All that kind of stuff. Just take me through a general overview.
Well, go for it, Dustin. I say it's some of all the above.
Yeah. Tom and I first got to know each other almost 20 years ago now. Actually, it's been more than 20 years now. Just through the local music scene, through mutual friends in the local music scene, and really got to know each other when Tom recorded one of my old bands at what at the time was his mobile studio. And around 2004 or 5, we started playing together as a duo here, mostly locally, focusing on old school country and folk and bluegrass kind of music, which Tom was very well versed in already, but I was sort of just getting into at the time after mostly coming up doing more blues oriented material. And we did the duo thing off and on for several years, even toured with that a little bit, but mostly close regionally here around Kansas. And then around the winter of 2011 into 12, we started to feel like we weren't able to do all the things that we wanted to do together musically in the duo lineup. And so we decided to call in a couple of other friends in the area, a great upright bass player named Dr. Mark Foley and a mandolin player named Ted Farha, and that became the original lineup of Haymakers.
Yeah, and it brings together a lot of good folk music feelings that we had, and I think part of our deal was to maintain the core of the band as the duet.
Right.
And getting started, there was not much choice because Dustin was on the road a lot with his other band at the time, and so we came together and would have a lot of on-the-job training for Doc Foley and Ted. But that has remained sort of how it has worked, and it's interesting. I've been asked a lot of questions lately about folk music versus bluegrass, and I think the cool thing we've got going is we've got a foot in both sides of the street or on either side of the line there, where we borrow the bluegrass drive of the mandolin chunk and some of what the bass would do more in that kind of lineup, but then with guitar and harmonica and harmony singing a little more folky. So anyway, I'm pleased with how things have been. So what the heck, it's been another 12 years has rolled under the bridge now?
Yeah, another dozen years, and it's it's continued to evolve. We've had some lineup changes since then. We have a bass player now named Caleb Drummond, who's been with us off and on since about 2015, but he's been a core member of the band since probably 18 or 19, and then we're rotating cast at mandolin over the last few years, but a fellow named Anthony Truppi is now our main touring guy who's been a lot of fun and committed to doing the road thing, and we're having a lot of fun with the current lineup of the band. And with the way the lineup's evolved over the years, I think it's also been part of our sound continuing to move and shape in different ways as we've gone forward.
Yep, agreed. I guess on the early years portion of it, coming up here in a couple of weeks, we've got a 19-year anniversary of the two of us playing together, which is the River Festival.
Yeah, that's right.
In case you couldn't make it out at first, like I couldn't when I was listening back to this during editing, I want to make it clear that the festival that they said they were going to be performing at was Wichita River Festival. So I wanted to ask about you two, Dustin and Tom specifically. How did you get started in music in the first place? How did your musical journey begin?
Let me take this one first.
Go ahead.
I grew up with an artsy family, as it were, and always remember there being music being played around the house on the record player and radio. But when I was about 2 years old, my parents got involved in a not-for-profit arts community group called the Forum in Wichita. And so throughout my childhood into my teen years was around the Forum and the Fool Killer in Kansas City, a sister organization. And so through that mechanism was exposed to all kinds of acoustic music, folk music, bluegrass music, blues music, you name it. If it was mostly unplugged type music, I was taking it in and going with the parents to the after parties 2 or 3 nights a week and getting to hear the real music of the people played at night at the parties. And so I've just followed on that and started playing guitar in my teen years and never really looked back.
I remember for me, I didn't necessarily grow up in a particularly arty or musical environment. My dad had been a musician in his younger years, but pretty much had stopped playing by the time I was around. But I do remember always being drawn to music, and I always really liked to sing just for my own enjoyment, did choir bands for kids, stuff like that. But in my mid-teens, I got really drawn to traditional blues music, and that's really what made me want to play music. Something about that, I hadn't been particularly aware of it other than, again, it was something that my dad had been kind of into, but I started hearing that music around the time I was maybe 15 or so, and starting to have a grasp of what it was, and it really drew me in, and that's what got me started playing in bands and playing the harmonica, and was really heavily inspired by that early country blues and the mid-20th century electric blues, and really focused super heavily on that for the first several years I was playing. But then you go back, you start to figure out how interconnected everything is, and the fact that Tom was talking about with folk music, blues is another form of folk music, and I think I followed that path and that rabbit hole and ended up through that and getting more drawn to bluegrass and old school country music, Appalachian folk music, things like that. And so that love for all things in American roots music has sort of guided what I've done throughout my career.
Yeah, I suppose I should mention another big influence for me was, or two of them are, there was a all-night radio show here in Wichita called After Midnight Radio, and I started listening to that as a pretty little kid, and as I got more into my teen years, was able to take in more of the hours of the After Midnight time slot. But in a lot of ways, and I think there are people that would argue this a lot, but I think that rock and roll music, garage rock of all forms, and kid rock, as it were, is also a type of folk music. It's just done on what are considered maybe less primitive instruments, but the players often have the same primitive mentality of why they're going about it. Anyway, exposure to all that was great. I started going to the Walnut Valley Festival in my late teens and got to go to that a few times, and I think that also formed a lot of the more practical notions that I have about how sounds of bands really fit together.
And to clarify, I don't think Tom was talking about Kid Rock the artist, more kids playing rock and roll music.
Kids playing the rock, exactly.
Can you guys talk about some of the other members of the band and how they got started in music?
Maybe we can volunteer a little bit. I can say I know that Caleb started playing pretty early, was in rock bands, but then also went to school to play the bass. So he took a much different route than us and has a music degree. Anthony, I know less about his formative time. I know that he's emerged in my life coming through these same sorts of what you might call jam band type arrangements around our area.
I always kind of got the sense that Anthony grew up as kind of a heavy rock kid and then got into jam bands and then the speedgrass stuff. He's a huge fan of stuff like Jeff Austin, Yonder Mountain, things like that, but also Arbuckle Dead.
I think he's definitely mentioned that Jeff Austin is one of the people who made him really want to actually not just have a mandolin, but play it.
Right.
I wanted to reach out to Anthony specifically just to get more information on his musical background, and it turns out Dustin's description is generally pretty accurate according to Anthony. He was born in 1990, so he grew up with metal, screamo, and heavy music, and eventually got introduced to Grateful Dead when he was 16. At 18 years old, he discovered bluegrass through Yonder Mountain String Band, and hearing Jeff Austin play mandolin in that band made him want to play in the first place. So he got a mandolin before he turned 20. This is all from a text that he sent me on Instagram, and he gave me permission to use that text. But going off of influences, are there any in particular that have stuck out to you guys and that have kept the band together as a whole?
Doc Watson would definitely be there.
Yes, I'd say Doc Watson, Sonny Terry on the other side of the fence, somebody we really like and could agree upon immediately. Lead Belly, yeah. I think if you look at the Folkways record tradition, those early 20th century compiles that they put out, and then put together with that, most of the people you think of as the flat pick country artists of the 70s, your Doc Watsons, your Norman Blakes, etc. I think that's probably the place we were standing to begin with.
Yeah, I'd say you'd probably mention people like Hank Williams in that as well, which feeds into a lot of what we've been doing lately.
Yeah, kind of the more pop side of the continuum, but still in that, rooted in the tradition.
Right.
So Tom, you described yourself at the beginning of this interview as the songwriter of the band. Would you describe yourself as the primary songwriter?
Yeah, probably primary songwriter is a good description. I'm a co-writer with Dustin on different stuff and then have brought in plenty of songs. Oh, that's just an interest, you know. I enjoy the process. I enjoy coming up with songs. Sometimes I really like the songs. I think we've moved in that direction partially because of necessity and partially because of enjoyment. But there's something about growing your own songs and performing those characters or those emotional vignettes over and over again, to me, is somewhat more enjoyable than other people's songs on some levels. I do occasionally get tired of whatever emotional vignette, and I think that's how we got started playing more of my songs, is, well, why don't you do this, Dustin? I'm tired of playing that with the other band. And so over time, though, I think we've got a pretty good balance of whatever, a stable of original music also mixed in with a lot of cover material we can draw upon when we feel the muse taking us in that direction.
And I think within the whole mix of all of it, like Tom said, we do co-write some stuff. Part of my thing as a songwriter is, as a person who doesn't play like a stringed instrument or piano or something of that nature, composition of the musical side of things can be a little more difficult for me. When I come up with songs on my own, it's mostly working with a lyrical and melodic idea and then bringing it into the guys, and we see what we can build around that.
Yeah, put some meat on the skeleton, so to speak.
Right. And so in many cases, it's one of those situations, though, where Tom does come in with really good songs that are already fully put together, and I've always loved Tom's songwriting. And so it worked out well that I've been happy to sing a lot of those songs that he was maybe tired of singing. So,
yeah, and we're on new horizons now, I think, of both co-writing and individual songwriting that are taking us in good directions.
Sure. I think with the cover songs, the other thing there, too, is we really try to do a mix of stuff that we know is more traditional oriented, meaning of unknown authorship, old enough that it's really part of the basis of these musical styles that we're interested in. There's cover stuff by people that you know and would have heard on the radio in the last 50 or 60 years, but also a lot of these songs that are literally hundreds of years old. And I think when you're playing folk music, part of your responsibility is to help perpetuate those traditions and make people aware of what has come before.
Absolutely, and I think it adds context to our songs of modernity also. Yep. And so if we can lay down that foundation, then the building upon it makes more sense. And of course, we've learned a lot over the years. Oh, yeah. A lot of songs that we would have at some campfire assumed was traditional, turns out they were written in the 1950s by crack songwriting teams from Nashville or New York.
I just found another one last week. Yeah. Diamond Joe. I always thought that was a cowboy song in the early 40s for a radio show.
Yes.
And how do you perform the covers that you play? Do you mix them up a little bit, arrange them in new ways? Do you try and play them as they were originally performed? Or do you do a mix of all kinds of different things?
It's both ways, I'd say. And, I mean, in some of these cases, like, for instance, a song we really like to play that we credit as the oldest song we do, called The Cuckoo, has been done in a lot of ways. What the original form of it might have been in the late Middle Ages, I don't really know. Maybe it was more droning. I'm not really sure what interpretation might have been. And so, in some ways, I mean, we are a little bit tied to what we know from recorded music of the 20th century being a guidepost to what may have come before.
Right.
And both of us have a fascination for the period before recorded music, especially in my mind that there's a lot of action between the Civil War and, say, World War I that is just all kinds of ideas are happening. And because of the Industrial Revolution, the ability to have sheet music has begun in earnest. And so a lot of people have access suddenly to piano, sheet music, and other sorts of instruments. And a lot of what was happening then is lost in the mist of time.
I wanted to issue a correction in this podcast because I realized as I was editing that I wrote in the article that the era that Tom was talking about was between the Civil War and World War II, not World War I. So I wanted to issue that correction in this moment of the podcast. I wanted to focus on you two individually for a second. First on Tom. What have been some of your favorite aspects of writing songs over the years?
That's an interesting question. I think I have gone through evolution as a songwriter, and so in some ways I think at first just the construction process and coming up with some sort of a story or poem that made sense to me and that I liked repeating was satisfying. Now I'm much more focused on there being beginning, middle, and ending of things. I'm kind of into a deal that a paragraph, a sentence, a novel, a chapter, whatever, at any unit there should be a beginning, a middle, and an ending. And the more I think along those kind of lines, I think the better the writing. I think lately I've been really pleased with the ability to write more in characters that are not my voice. In most of my early writing, even if I'm conjuring some other personage, I think I was mostly doing it through my own voice, and so maybe through poetic speech, where if I'm able to get myself into the idea that I'm writing about a character, somehow I've been able to get to more direct language, which I've been pleased by.
And now I want to circle back to Dustin. What have been some of your favorite parts of seeing the songwriting process come to life through Tom and arranging some of these songs for the band?
I think the process of putting them together is always fun, figuring out, is it good as it is to just go straight ahead, or how can we find ways to each, with our own part of the song, make it take off in some sort of different way, either if that's changes in arrangement or changes in the way I might sing it compared to the way Tom was singing it, or how the sound may change once all the instruments are involved. I know that's maybe a complicated way to say just the journey of putting them together, and then there's definitely a feeling of satisfaction when you feel like you have your own thing put together as a finished product. It feels like you've created this thing, and then what's left is to see how people respond to it. And then that's fun in its own self.
Yes, and I think, too, if I look at some of our stuff that, say, for instance, we've got a song called Moonlight on the Mountain that is a song that was mostly Dustin, and he had a pretty crystallized idea on the whole thing, and I helped put together the first arrangement of it. If I look at how we played it 10 years plus ago, we've definitely grooved it out a little more and changed the way that we approach the jam a little more. And I think that just basically has to do with both of us and the band growing as musicians.
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you have any experience in performing solo shows? Do you have more experience in performing with ensembles?
All of the above.
Yeah. As Tom talked about, when we first started Haymakers, I was still in the midst of a band called Moreland and Arbuckle that I was with for 15 years and toured all over the world with and all that kind of stuff. But when that band, and we've all got and still currently have other bands that we work and tour with and stuff like that. But I think that's part of the fun is that you get to do these different things musically.
Yeah, we get to bring back something to Haymakers to some extent,
yeah.
Which helps. But yeah, you can find Dustin under Dustin and His Damnation. You can find me under Lonesome Stranger Band. There's these names out there, and part of it is that, I don't know how long ago, but part of maybe how we came together also is that both of us had made the personal decisions that we really wanted to play music and pay the bills with making music, and that is not the most easy thing to do, it's turned out, but we've survived so far.
Yeah, and one more reason that it helps to diversify what you do, because sometimes the opportunity might be there for one of the other bands or something.
Yeah, some people don't like bands with drums. Some people don't like bands without drums. Go figure. Yeah. Taste may vary.
Taste may vary.
I wanted to shout out some of the other groups that these people have been involved in real quick, because they have been involved in quite a few over the years. Dustin has already talked about Moreland and Arbuckle, but Tom has also been involved in a group called Grandpa's 38. Caleb has been involved in Spirit of the Stairs, and Anthony has been involved in Cowskin Creek. And that doesn't even count the previous members of the band. Mark Foley, who was in the Wichita Symphony, Ted Farha, who was in the Riverside Mandolin Quartet, and Dennis Hardin, who was in Stringhounds. I chose just one group to list in the article for each person that I published for these guys, because they're in so many other groups. This doesn't even begin to list all of the groups that these people have been involved in. So do yourself a favor. Look up all of these guys. See what other groups they've been involved in. I'm sure you'll have a blast going down this musical wormhole. But getting back to the current lineup of the Haymakers, Dustin and Tom, are there any aspects of group performance that you prefer over solo performance? Are there any aspects of solo performance you prefer over group performance? Or do you like mixing it up and doing both?
I think I definitely like group. As a singer-songwriter type person, I have a lot more opportunity in some ways maybe than Dustin does to do these solo shows, and I do them, but I always feel a little naked and like there could be a lot more variety if there was something else happening. And so they're challenging to me, and I accept them for the challenge, but I prefer group, or let's say ensemble. I think I'm stronger at ensemble.
Yeah, as a person who plays a wind instrument, it's pretty hard. I can do solo shows, and I have. But
yeah, occasionally they come up, right? Yeah.
It's pretty rare, but once in a while somebody does call me and say, hey, do you want to come do a short solo set as part of this multi-act bill or something? And it's kind of fun to do that for a little while, just for the challenge of seeing how long I can stand up there and entertain people with just myself and the harmonica, for how long that can work. But yeah, I think playing with a group of people, as Tom said, playing as part of an ensemble is definitely my preference, because it just allows for a lot more possibilities. You have foundation there and energy from different people that you can play off of. For myself, I've always said that we all enjoy different aspects of making music. Some people enjoy the creative aspect the most. Some people enjoy the recording and producing an album. For me, I think the thing that I've always liked the most is the actual performance part of it, where you're drawing on the energy from each other within the other people that you're making music with. And then in turn, you and the crowd pass that energy back and forth as well. And so, I mean, I think there's something about that that is pretty magical. And that's the thing. It's like you don't even have to have much of a crowd if you like the music that you're playing and like the people that you're playing it with and like playing with those people. So that's the biggest advantage, I think, of playing with a band.
And especially, we're really in a lucky place to have a band of people who are respectful to each other. Music,
oh, yeah.
And we're all listening and wanting to build. It's really more important to have the whole thing flourish than any individual. And I think that we're all on that wavelength, which is a fantastic place to be.
What are some of your favorite parts about being able to perform live? Is it the energy that you get from the crowd? Is it being able to share these songs with a crowd? What are some of your favorite aspects?
Well, to me, it is those things. It's the chance to really share our art, and then, yes, the energy we draw upon from each other, which is good, and then the energy shared with the crowd. And sometimes that crowd energy is just so, I don't know what to say, rejuvenating.
Oh, yeah.
You can just receive a lot of energy that then can be a little hard to go to sleep for a couple days. But, it's interesting in the sense that as time's gone on, both of us have done plenty of travel. And there are the draggy parts of the whole thing. But I think if you don't like that end goal of getting to the performance, you wouldn't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to love the road, you have to love doing the gigs.
Exactly. The joy is in the work.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why even making a relatively meager living at doing this, when you make that decision, I think that's what it has to be about, because you might get lucky and the money might get really, really good, but you probably won't, and the work has to be a big part of the reward. Certainly once you get past the point of at least being able to do this for some kind of a living. So.
Well, it's really true. And I mean, again, there are the ups and downs part of it. But I think for me, for sure, it's that end of getting to the show and doing it is generally very satisfying. And somehow that process, then the rest doesn't really matter. And it's okay if we got a little sweaty moving the equipment or whatever. We have a lot of little sayings that we employ because we're together a lot. And so one of mine is there's conditions. There will always be conditions. You're always struggling under some condition. It's hot, it's cold, it's loud, it's not loud, it's crowded, it's not crowded. There's a game, whatever the heck it is. It doesn't really matter. And I think that, again, the more we focus on the idea that, there's always these things, we just have to go and do this thing. We have to go and make this show happen. Getting into that mindset, and I think, again, both of us have been there so long now, it's hard to understand approaching it differently. But getting into that mindset really is what I think allows you to sustain the momentum of the band and just keep loving it.
And is there anything that you hope audience members will be able to take away from your shows when they come and see Haymakers performing live?
Good question.
I hope that they can tell how much we love the music. I hope that they take away that the sincerity is there and that means a lot to us. And that they've had a good time because, that's the whole point. We're all trying to have a good time up there, right?
Yes, I hope that it is an enjoyable experience for everybody, that they have some rejuvenation of this shared energy, and that the harmonic content of whatever we're giving them is something that even if they don't have a name for it, that they like it and that it feels good to them. And I hope that we do convey some amount of both seriousness about the craft, but also the idea that anybody can do this. And that's one of the fundamentals of folk music, is that anybody can do this. And if you do it for a while, you might get good at it.
Is there anything else you wanted to add before we move on to our next guest?
We should mention that we have 2 albums that we put out last year. One of them is mostly original music entitled Wakanda Flyer, which is a title derived from a historic spot here in Kansas and the lore associated with that spot. And we have a second album called 100 Years of Hank, a Hank Williams tribute album. Hank would have been 100 years old last fall if he had lived to be that age. The latter has done very well for us and gotten a lot of play around the country, and we'll mix in songs from both albums, of course, at the show. For future promotion, I guess also we should mention we're very careful about not promoting things that are right around our main event, right, which in this case is United Center.
Right.
So if you look at the calendar, you'll see we're in Kansas and we're doing some other stuff, but the main event is United Center. We will be back on the other end of the Front Range. In July, we will be in Colorado Springs playing the Flower Fest.
The Rocky Mountain Flower Fest.
There you go.
I believe it's Venatucci Farm.
It is, yes.
And, while I'm at it, if folks want to find us on the interwebs,
yes.
And the website is haymakersstringband.com. And then if you want to find us on the Facebook or the Instagram, it's Haymakers ICT.
Yes, like ice cream truck or Wichita on the airport codes.
Yep.
Thank you so much to Dustin and Tom for coming on board and joining us for the podcast. You can see them, Anthony, and Caleb performing as Haymakers at the United Center, 1440 Colorado Boulevard in Idaho Springs on Saturday, June 8th, 2024, starting at 6 p.m. Keep in mind, last week's music guest, Iron Roots, also has a show on Saturday, June 8th at 6 p.m. at a different venue, so make sure that you listen to both episodes of the podcast to see which band you would prefer to see live. You can also learn more about Haymakers by visiting their website at haymakersstringband.com and purchase merchandise like clothing and their albums, which include their self-titled 2017 release, 2021's Live at Art Church, and 2023's Wakanda Flyer, and 100 Years of Hank. You can also stream their music anywhere you get your music. And now, let's move on to our second musical guest of the week. Do you mind introducing yourself real quick?
Hello, my name is Kyle O'Brien, and I'm a musician from Evergreen, Colorado.
You might recognize Kyle O'Brien's name from last week's episode of the podcast involving the Fly Fishing Film Tour, where I used some of his music to promote his brand new EP, Bear in the Trash, which at the time of that episode's release had not yet come out. It was scheduled to be released on May 23rd, but due to some licensing issues, it actually came out on May 29th. So, it is now officially available for all of you guys to stream, and since somehow I never published the interview that I did with Kyle O'Brien in February 2023, I thought I'd post it now. Back then, you were about to perform for the Canyon Tavern, weren't you?
Yes, that's right. We've got a show coming up on the 25th of Saturday at the Canyon Tavern, and I believe I'll be playing some of my original music from my latest album, Country Pie, as well as honky tonk and country classic. I would say that this is a time to pull out my Johnny Cash and my Merle Haggard songs and stuff. I Love This Bar comes to mind. Maybe I Got Friends in Low Places, although I don't want that to represent the Canyon Tavern badly, because that is a wonderful establishment, just to be clear.
Of course, we can't promote that particular show anymore, but I still wanted to promote your EP and put this interview out for everyone to hear. So tell us, how did you get started in music in the first place?
Man, I've been playing music ever since I was a little kid. I grew up in a family with a musical father who used to take us to festivals and concerts all the time. Kind of a hippie head, Grateful Dead, Bob Dylan type music fan and songwriter himself from the Bay Area, but then moved out to Colorado and started his family. And so it's myself and my sister and my mother is our immediate family. And by the time I was about 10, we were a family band. So we played music and played together and did songs and shows for people ever since I was a little teenager. So this is just an extension for me of a love that has just been lifelong. And I've traveled all over the world extensively throughout the United States as well. Since graduating from college in San Francisco and moving on from the family band, I was in a band called the Earl Brothers in San Francisco. I was in a band called the Hen House Prowlers in Chicago. And then more recently, I was playing in a band called the Recklins here in Evergreen. But I'm getting my own band together, and that's the Kyle O'Brien Band. And we've had our show, a great show at the Wood Cellar, and had a bunch of people show up for it, partied late into the evening, and It was a lot of fun. I had a full 5-piece bluegrass band. But for the show on the 25th, I think I might be able to entice my mom to join me on the bass. She is a fantastic stand-up bass player, and sometimes on the weekend when she's not a teacher for hearing impaired children down in Aurora, Colorado, she's actually my bass player. So I'll see if I can wrangle her up for some bass playing.
At the time of this recording, you were promoting your album Country Pie. Was that your first solo album?
Well, actually, it's my second because my first album came out when I was 14. Actually, my first album was called Cosmic Hit, and I just thought as a little kid that I wanted to start with a bang. But then it took me quite a while to get my second official solo album out into the world because I'm quite a bit older now. But I'm very proud of it because it was produced and recorded at the home studio of Chance McCoy, who is one of the Grammy Award-winning members of Old Crow Medicine Show and the classic folk country band that had a hit with Wagon Wheel and co-wrote it with Bob Dylan and a whole bunch of other great songs. So he actually produced that album and played a bunch of different instruments on it and sang harmonies on it and really made it a special thing. And that was recorded in 2020 and released 2022. So that's really exciting for me, those 10 original songs. But then I think for me, the new band, getting my own band together and having my mom play in that band with me for the first time in nearly 15 years that we played in a band together, it's really great. It's really special. And we've got a bunch of country and bluegrass and cowboy songs that we sing and play together, and it's kind of my inspiration in general is that Western feel.
So would you say that bluegrass and Western music is primarily your style of music?
Yeah, right. Acoustic music mostly. Bluegrass, country, Americana, roots, folk. I don't try to pinpoint it too much, but I do feel very comfortable expressing it with those descriptors. So, yeah.
What are some of your favorite aspects about performing live?
Oh my gosh, it's just such a part of who I am because I think of myself someone as a bard or someone who just loves to collect songs that resonate with people and with myself. And for me, it's more than just entertainment. It gets to the folk aspect of tradition and storytelling and our national identity and local identities as well. So to me, it's being just a part of my community because I feel like my role in my community is a musician, teacher of music, and storyteller. And so that's not the most important of jobs in a community, but it is mine. I take it seriously, and I try to represent myself and my community as best I can.
Is there anything that you hope people will take away from your shows when they come and see you, or from your music when they listen to it?
Well, right now, I think the most important thing is just the community aspect of getting out, being together. We've gone through a lot in the last couple years of pandemic and just uncertainty and division, and so I hope that we can just come out and enjoy an evening together, and hopefully people will recognize a few songs that I play, and if they don't, I hope they request one that they really like, because for me, that's a part of it, is the audience. I hope they hear something that they connect with, and they remember something about the show afterwards, after they head home. That's a successful night in my book, and just the fact that people can get out and be together and enjoy themselves, that's what I'm hoping for the most.
And have there been aspects of the writing process that have stuck out to you over the years?
Sure. Yeah, I've been writing ever since I was a little kid. One time I told my dad, hey, I want to be a songwriter. I was probably like 9. But I said, I don't think I've done enough things to write songs about yet. Enough experience to draw from. And I think my dad said, well, that's okay, Kyle. You don't always have to write from first-person experience. You can also envision something or put yourself in someone's shoes. And so that's been something that I've really enjoyed taking on, is both putting myself in my writing, but then also feeling the creative freedom to feel other stories and put yourself in other situations. A lot of my songwriting comes from my own personal experience, but I love to write from other perspectives too. There's a song called Good Time, Old Time on the record. It's actually the last song, and it's just about a big barn party with a bunch of musicians and dancers and like a bar and hay bales and stuff, and just the feeling of old time entertainment on a Friday night that brings us back to our roots. And I talk about different musicians in that song that are some of my heroes and come from fiddle tunes and musical lore that I grew up with. And so it's fun to write and consider my songs and my writing being heard by audiences and bigger groups of people and communities, because that's really who I feel like I'm trying to talk to.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before we sign off for the week?
Sure. Yeah, well, I've got more shows coming up, and you can always check them out on my Facebook, Kyle O'Brien Music, or KyleO'BrienMusic.com. But I'm really excited to be in this upcoming summer 2023 2023, I'm going to be playing more with my mom and also with a few good friends who have been just really fun to play with recently. We've got new songs and stuff that we're pulling together, a lot of fiddle tunes, a lot of bluegrass jams that just have a lot of energy. So it's fun music. People can dance around. And I'm just looking forward to showing people what we got because I feel like it's going to be a fun summer. I hope people can get out and about and enjoy some live music. And hopefully we're going to be out there playing a lot. So that's the goal, is just a healthy, happy 2023 and summer and coming out of the winter time, going to the spring and waking up, getting people ready for some excitement. Well, I'm about to head out to a little gig. I do play at the Campfire in Evergreen every Friday night and Sundays afternoon.
Thank you so much to Kyle for coming on board back in, February of 2023 for his performance at the Canyon Tavern. However, you can now stream his EP, Bear in the Trash, which includes 5 brand new songs, including 2 covers. The songs are I Could Change My Mind, Bear in the Trash, the title song, which also has an animated music video on his YouTube channel, Kyle O'Brien Music, Turkey in the Straw, Ain't Nobody Luckier, and Take Me Home Country Roads, the cover of the iconic John Denver song. You can now stream this EP and even buy it if you want, wherever you get your music. And now, for this week's Music Mentions. Head to Busey Brews, located at 70 East 1st Street in Netherland on Sunday, June 2nd at 2 p.m. to see Elzard Stallings, known as Zaya, performing live. Head to the Canyon Tavern, located at 32138 Highway 72 in Coal Creek Canyon on Saturday, June 1st at 6 p.m. to see Adrian Pounty performing live. Head to Chipeta Park, located at 254-306 Lakeview Drive in Netherland on Saturday, June 1st, starting at 4 p.m. to see Rolling Harvest and Bonnie and Taylor Sims Band performing live at the first installment of Time Serve Production Group Ltd's Netherlands Summer Concert Series. Head to the Diner Bar Ned, located at 121 North Jefferson Street in Netherland on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. for a karaoke night and on Sundays at 6 p.m. for an open mic night. Head to the Gold Hill Inn, located at 401 Main Street in Gold Hill on Friday, May 31st at 8 p.m. to see High Lonesome performing live, on Saturday, June 1st at 6 p.m. to see Strange Birds performing live, on Sunday, June 2nd at 5:30 p.m. to see the Martin Gilmore Duo performing live, and on Wednesday, June 5th at 5:30 p.m. to see Brothers in the Haze performing live. Head to Howland Wind Brewing, located at 51A Main Street in Rollinsville on Saturday, June 1st at 4 p.m. to see Tubal Down Shack performing live. Head to the Jamestown Mercantile, located at 108 Main Street in Jamestown on Friday, May 31st at 7 p.m. to see the Al Capones performing live, on Sunday, June 2nd at 12:15 p.m. to see Earth to Aaron performing live, on Wednesday, June 5th at 5 p.m. for an open mic night, and on Thursday, June 6th at 7 p.m. to see Covenhoven performing live. Head to JKQ Barbecue, located at 200 Gregory Street in Blackhawk on Friday, May 31st at 6 p.m. and on Saturday, June 1st at 5 p.m. to see Nick Ward from Kind Mountain Band performing live. Head to Knotted Root Brewing, located at 250 North Caribou Street in Netherland on Friday, May 31st at 6 p.m. to see DeLovely's performing live, and on Saturday, June 1st at 5:30 p.m. to see New Family Dog performing live. Also be sure to head there every Wednesday at 6 p.m. for an open mic night, and on Sundays at 5 p.m. for Jazz Sundays. And finally, head to the Very Nice Brewing Company, located at 20 East Lakeview Drive, number 112 in Netherland on Friday, May 31st at 6 p.m. to see Rick Labato performing live, and on Sunday, June 2nd at 5 p.m. to see Hucklebearers performing live. Did we miss you or your performance? Want to submit your music listing in the Peak to Peak area? Do you have updates to your business or to your performances? Please call 303-810-5409 or email info@themountaineer.com to be included in the next print edition or the next podcast of The Mountain Ear.
1, 2, 3, 4.
The song that you are currently listening to is Kyle O'Brien's Bear in the Trash, the title song from his brand new EP, which you can listen to wherever you get your music. You can also check out an animated music video of the song on his YouTube channel, Kyle O'Brien Music.
I said a couple words that I won't repeat today. I ran my fingers through my hair. It's then I rubbed my eyes. It's then I looked outside. It's then I saw the bear. There's a bear.
And that's it for our show. Subscribe online to get more access to more news, weekly updates to our community calendar, and a link to our YouTube channel by visiting themountaineer.com. Be sure to use the coupon code PODCAST when subscribing for a 10% discount, only available to our listeners. If you are in the local Peak to Peak area, be sure to pick up a print edition of The Mountaineer at a local business. I'm Dango Rose. Thank you for listening.